Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to the Totally Driven Entertainment Radio Network. Get driven. Stay driven. All right, Totally Driven Radio fans, welcome to this special edition of our Author Spotlight series. Today we're going to be talking to author Truth Devour, and we're going to be talking about the trilogy here, Wantin, Unrequited, and Sated by Truth Devour. And these are it's sort of a contemporary romantic trilogy. We're going to talk about the first book, then we'll probably go into the series and how it all came about and how everything develops from idea to, published work. And we'll get into a little bit. We'll see if it's maybe a little mysterious, maybe a little sexy. Who knows? But as soon as we get the author on, we'll start talking. All right, guys, it looks like we have the author on the line, so right now I'm going to bring on Truth Devour, and we're going to talk a little bit about this series and what we can expect from future books, where we're going. I also just read that there's a contemporary fantasy series as well, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But let's bring the author on, and we will find out what we need to know.
Hey, Nick, it's Truth Devour. How are you going?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, so I introduced the audience a little bit, told them a little bit about the series, that there's a trilogy here, and I figure we can just jump right into the first of the Wantin, Unrequited, and Sated, and then afterwards we can maybe talk about some fantasy or where the books came from, how they, went from idea to page, and talk a little bit about the LA Book Festival as well.
Yeah, no problems. So Wantin, Unrequited, and Sated, they're a contemporary romantic trilogy, I'd say, in the adult category. Basically, it's a coming-of-age story, so it's not just about a romance. It's following girls growing up from the age of 6 all the way through to her early, to late 30s, and her experiences in life. So it's coloured with pages of travel and, a lot of characters that she meets help to formulate who she is and helps her to find herself in a lot of ways. It basically is a reflection of the way we grow, and it's just a particular story that I utilised to cover a whole series of aspects of experiences that I had in my life. Leveraged off a lot of that and things that I'd learnt from other people along the way. So it's a beautiful story that nicely melts from one into the other. And obviously the titles, Wantin, Unrequited, and Sated. So there is a large portion of her life where she is going forward and trying to find that elusive love that she's craving internally but not able to actually identify or experience or relate to in real life with the people that she meets, until obviously she starts to get a lot older into the third, towards the third book.
Right, and as I was reviews, the one thing that kept coming up from all your fans was that the book isn't erotica. It's so much more than that. There's a deep and personal story involved there too, with everything else that comes with contemporary romantic books and stuff like that. But that the story is sort of deep and rich, and there's a lot of traveling, and there's a sort of finding yourself aspect to the story.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because being a first-time author, the trilogy is the first that I'd actually published. I'd written other books. I haven't published those yet. And I was going through the experience of different companies were reading some of the components of the book and saying, no, it has to be classified as erotica. And I was like, well, if you classify it as erotica, then I'm in a position where people that like reading erotica may be disappointed, because it's not the sole context of the book. Sure, there's certainly components where there's descriptives around it, but for me, I would suggest that they're light descriptives. But we're not talking pages and pages and focused aspects. It's just the realities of life is that people have relationships, and, that component is described in some detail at some point, because let's face it, if you're going to write about it, you might as well make it interesting. So, so for some areas where I'm publishing, Amazon is an example. It does list it as erotica, when in actual fact I would prefer or suggest that it's more an adult contemporary romantic trilogy, because you're right, there are people that have then reached out and said, this is an erotica, and my response is, right, I agree.
Well, and your fans really seem to connect with the story. It's definitely more than that. From going from 6 years old to awakening as a young adult, and even the relationships and how things went from with the parents, and then it was really. It seemed different to me. It wasn't just about one category, and it was very clear that your fans felt the same way.
Yeah, and I must say that has been an absolute joyous experience, because there have been people that have reached out to me on areas like Goodreads, who have started to talk about the characters and get really involved in the story, which I absolutely love, and I'm so appreciative that it's been in a position where people have actually related to it and felt compelled to want to be a part of the journey. In some instances, people that had come on board early on when I had written Wantin were, so excited about the idea of Unrequited coming out and once again Sated. And, now I have people reaching out to me saying, please don't tell me this is the end. There has to be more. And it's just fantastic. I love the fact that it's been in a position where it has reached people, it has touched people, and people feel so able to relate to the story that's been told. So, yeah, it's quite special. I've really loved that component of the creative path.
Well, and let's talk about Wantin for a little bit. It was the 2015 winner of the LA Book Festival in the romance category. And so obviously you're getting a lot of traction here, but where did it come from? Tell me about how it started from an idea to the point where you were ready to publish.
So a lot of the stories that I have written, and including these ones, I guess I started writing from a very young age, but had never felt compelled to share the stories at all. I've told some people about the stories, or allowed some people to read some of them, but it's never been something that I've ever wanted to put out to the public. And then what had happened was I had a life-challenging experience which put me into a point where I chose to retrospectively look at my life and look at the things that I wanted to do moving forward. And the reality is I just love to write. I love to be creative. And so I decided that I would publish. I wasn't happy or comfortable with publishing the 8 that I'd already written, and decided that I would write a story specifically to put out to the marketplace that I would be satisfied with. So that was the target. And Wantin is something that is a story that's been with me for a very long time. A lot of the layers of the experiences in all 3 of the books are part of experiences that I've actually had in my life. And obviously I changed the times and details of countries and bits and pieces, but reality is that it existed within me already. So I thought I'd take the journey and put that together. Some components where it talks about, it goes on certain layers of, I guess, mythical or mystical. A lot of that is stemmed from perhaps dreams that I've had, or even travel experiences when I've gone overseas and, allowed myself to go into some tribal trance. And, there's things that have come out of that. So I've coloured and added a lot of that based on real life, and that's why when I created Wantin, it takes you on a particular path in the first chapter, and then the second chapter takes you on a different tangent. And part of that was to highlight you can never make assumptions, and you can never go down a path and assume that everything is going to be the way you believe it's going to be. And, so a lot of people have said to me, the first chapter and the second chapter, it kind of throws you. And the intention is exactly that, because you nestle into a concept and then all of a sudden you're thrown into a different direction. The direction is so far removed from where you thought it was going that it makes you think, oh, where is this going? And then all of a sudden you start to get committed to the journey.
Now let me ask you this. When you were writing Wantin, did any of your previous writing, did any of the early stories or themes or characters, did any of that develop into, is any of that put into this trilogy as well?
No, completely different. So
you kept
the other book,
still personal, still to yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
But the reality is that the other books I'll possibly still will publish. It's just that the way they had been written weren't necessarily as what I would consider marketable in a way. I guess it needs to be softened up in certain areas. One of them's a psycho thriller, and it is so crude in some aspects that I just sort of think it would need to be softened on its edges, and I just didn't have the desire to go and creatively change them. I like them the way they are, but I'm not satisfied that they're ready to be published. And so I thought one day I will publish those, and possibly will go back and then look at them and say, yep, okay, I'll just change them. But the interesting thing that I've found is, as now a published author, I'm obviously leaning towards and enjoying the contemporary, genre. But there are other very distinct genres that I've written in that I haven't published. And I think it's interesting to see whether or not I will become categorized in people's perceptions. And then you build a target audience of people around a certain area. Like for the trilogy, it's romantic. And, the next series that I'm doing is more contemporary fantasy, contemporary paranormal. So it's a completely different group of people, potentially. I mean, some will cross over, but there's a lot of people that are very dedicated to one genre.
Now, do you think that will cross over as well, though? Will there be that sort of level of romance and everything in the fantasy? Because you do see a lot of crossover, I think, in certain genres. They sort of lend themselves to be, to allow for a certain amount of mix.
Yeah, I guess that the story that's being told through the Soliloquy Labyrinth series is not going to be, as far as I can see it, romantic. And Illuminarium certainly isn't romantic. There is components of expression of love, characters caring for one another, but it's not a romantic tale, but there's certainly beauty in the interrelationships.
Oh, wow. So tell me about winning the Best Romance Book at the LA Book Festival in 2015. There's got to be a certain amount of validation there as far as what you wanted to put out and, the quality of your work and everything like that.
Yeah, I have to say that was a fantastic surprise. I'd basically submitted my books. I'd submitted Wantin, not the trilogy. It's been a challenge to try and find any competitions. I haven't successfully found any that are specific for trilogies. So therefore, when you're going to enter these competitions, I'm only putting the first book in, and had done a series of book festivals like the London Book Festival and the South Coast and East Coast of the US. All of these, Wantin comes up as honorary mentions. So I've never not. Then the LA Festival came out and the announcement was that Wantin had won the romance category, and that was just brilliant. So yeah, I received the award for that, which was fabulous. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to fly over to LA to be there. I would have been a part of that, but I had some personal things come up. The fact that it was recognised, I think, is brilliant. But the reality is that all the people that are reading the book and, the responses that I'm getting from them, to me, is precisely what I see as a guide in terms of saying that I've reached a target audience, and they're getting what I was actually, intending to deliver, and the emotions and, the laughter and the tears, and, they're really being moved the way I wanted them to be. So for me, it's really about the responses of the people and knowing that, I'm not going to please everyone, but the people that are enjoying it are really enjoying it, which I find absolutely satisfying.
And I would have to agree. As I'm reading some of the reviews and I hear some, key phrases that come up, that the story sort of stays with you long after you finished reading it, that it's more than just a love story, that there seems to be a lot of passion, not only in the writing and in the story, but among the fan base who sort of, not to use a play on words, but they're devouring the series. They seem to really relate to the characters, and the sort of real life is what I'm sort of getting from them, is that it's a real story about finding love.
Oh, absolutely. And it's the trials and tribulations associated to that, and the disappointments of, meeting people, and, especially through the Unrequited series where, she's starting to go into, Talia is the main character's name, and she's starting to get to a point where she's appreciating who she might be as an individual, and is coming into her own strength and doing her own things. But, being people trying to coerce, push and pull, or, take her down different tangents, or convince her that, what she's doing is wrong, follow my way kind of thing, and for her to have to then stand up on her own and say, that doesn't feel right. I'm actually going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to exercise things in my particular way. And being human, makes mistakes along the way. She's not perfect, and she'll recognize that and look at it retrospectively and go, yep, okay, that wasn't my life, and keeps going. So it is very relatable. The beauty of it is, too, I guess, it does have and covers off areas of paranormal. Those paranormal experiences and aspects, if it's witchcraft-based, and there's also voodoo involved. There's lots of things, but it's all cultural. So then it takes you to the basis of the experiences through the actual places. So she has experiences in Haiti and, has experienced voodoo and all those kinds of things. So a lot of the people, one lady in particular who reached out to me had said that she was bedridden for most of her life, had been at some point able to be mobilized in a wheelchair, but, now was more, restricted. And she said that her desire had always been to travel and never got the opportunity to, and she just loved reading the series because of all the different destinations that the character travels to. She'd said that she just felt like she was there, and it took her to all these different places that she then started to Google, because there's aspects of the story take place in Romania. And she started to research all these places and said it was just fabulous and thoroughly enjoyed it, which to me was just, I don't know, it's really touching, and it's great to know that what I've put out there, people, like I said, the people that like romance, like journeys, that read the book, are enjoying it so much that it's just given me a heightened appreciation and return of, satisfaction for actually putting them out there in the first place. It's been so incredible.
So as you're writing the book, let me ask you this. How important was it to get sort of an authenticity regarding the journeys and the travels and the different destinations, whereas you're not just in a bedroom in Romania or in a bedroom in New Orleans or something like that? How important to you was it that you really wanted to capture sort of the essence of the destination? To
me, it's absolutely critical. And I say this because the reality is that, I'm going down this creative path and looking at changing my entire life and my entire career to just become a full-time writer. And if I'm to do that, then I want to enjoy the process as well. So when I'm writing, I'm entertaining myself just as much as I'm preparing to entertain the potential readers out there who will read the work that I produce. So for me, it's critical to be able to be part of it, to experience it. So, I smell the coffee as I describe it, and there's aspects of that book where I burst into tears as I was writing it, or even editing it, I was crying because it just moves me so much. And I think that's the critical part of being able to reach out to the audience that is interested in reading the books, that they are able to relate to it because, it wrenched my heart in areas. So, I would expect that other people would have a similar reaction to some degree. Everybody's different, but, they'll feel it, and that's the whole option. But there's no point in writing something if I'm not going to enjoy it or take the journey with the characters. So ultimately for me, it's so critical to make sure that there is colour, emotion, feeling, enough so that you could close your eyes and be there. And, if it doesn't take me there, I'm not writing it or I'm altering it in a way to make sure that it actually has that effect, because that's part of the enjoyment of creating it in the first place for me.
Well, let me ask you this. The last book in the series, Sated, it sort of has, the name itself implies a comfortable finality to it. Is there going to be more to the story? Do you have more story to tell, or is it too early to really say?
There will be more to the story, I can tell you that. The reality is that, I got to a point and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but, this other series that I had planned or was marinating in my mind, I really wanted to write, and I thought, okay, now it's time to flip over and write this 5 series, which I'm doing at the moment. And I know that as soon as I've completed that, I have no doubt that I'm more than likely going to jump back into the Enigma series, which is Wantin, Unrequited and Sated, and add to that. Whether that's 1 or 2, I'm not sure, but then I've got another 8 series planned post that. So I'm going to be busy from now to 2017.
Well, a lot of modern authors today are also using their website to sort of bridge the gap between books or stories or timelines. I know that you have a website, right? It's www.truthdevour.com. And is there any chance of little stories or novellas or anything like that being published on the website? Something to tide the fans over until the next book comes out?
There is potential if I need a break between this series, but I'm quite ferocious when I write. So when I start a book, I want to finish writing that book. So I will more than likely, at the moment actually, I've got the website being developed. It should be launched hopefully before the end of this month. Part of what I wanted to do as an appreciation for the people that have come along the journey and are interested in participating in the next series is I've instigated a page that I've called Truth Devour, which is really me taking people into my personal world, which is around here's how I planned the Soliloquy Labyrinth series. Here is an insight into Illuminarium and how I broke down the characters. Here is how I storyboard my work and my writing. So a lot of readers are avid writers in some form or fashion, and a lot of them are always looking for information or understanding on, how to write, as an example. So rather than saying to people, this is the way to write, this is the way I write. And I'll take you on the journey and I'll show you things and I'll explain stuff. And please use it as stimulus, leverage, understanding, even in terms of the way the books are, because these ones are more psychological, paranormal fantasy. So therefore, they're a little bit more complex. And when you go through them, they can leverage off this information to go, oh, I see. And it covers off a whole series of background. So it's about, I'm using this website now to sort of say, well, if you really are enjoying this and you really are into writing, come on the journey. And for Illuminarium, or the entire series, I'm actually setting up what I'm calling the Super Review Crew, which once again I'll launch out. And it's really about asking people if they want to be committed to reviewing the entire series.
Right. Well, I think fans today, they really sort of respond more to, you know, when I was growing up, it was just books. You bought a book, you read the book, you read the next one, and that was it. But today, with social media and everything else that's out there, fans are just craving more when they connect to something, which is maybe harder today because there's so many more options. They're really looking for a way to connect, and that sounds like a really good idea to keep the fans engaged and involved and to make them feel like they're sort of part of the team and not just reading a story from afar.
Yeah, that's right. And the other part is, I guess, it's enjoyable for me to share that with them, but you know, they can ask questions about certain things, or if they're trying to go down a path of, shifting into writing, as an example. If there's anything I can do to offer them any insight or information, I mean, for me, it should be something that we share. A lot of people are closed off, as I'd found for myself. But then also on the internet these days, there's a lot of information out there as well, not necessarily steering you in the right direction, but you live and learn a lot of that through the process, and part of that's the journey of your own personal growth. For me, I guess, with the Super Review Crew that I mentioned, you know, one of the things I'd said to people is that if you're coming on board, it's not about just collating people that are guaranteed to love the books. Obviously, I want them to enjoy the books and like the genre, but it's difficult when you're writing a 5 series to have somebody can't just come in and read the 4th. They would have had to have read the first through. So the people that are committed to saying that they're willing to read the books and give honest opinion, at the end of the day, they can post them out there. It's not about telling me in advance, or it's about them committing to saying, yep, I want to know. I'll give them advance notice of what book covers look like. I'll take them on the journey of certain characters. I'm going to run some competitions potentially for the next series to say, do you want to name a character? But obviously I want them to read the first book to understand, and have relationships with them to be able to come in and contribute. And lots of people have some fantastic ideas. I overhear conversations on the bus or on the train where I think, actually, that's a pretty good slant. I like that. And write it down, and I like utilizing the component of it, So there's always information or creative aspects you can leverage from anyone you ever meet.
Well, thinking about creative aspects and the level of fan involvement that we're talking about, and I don't know if this is an American term, so I'll have to explain it if it isn't, but have you had any experience with the shippers? Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so shippers are like super fans who insist that certain relationships and certain, couples should be together regardless of what the author says. So it's sort of, they just have their own idea of where characters should go, and they almost get sort of protective about the characters, and they want them to go down a certain path. And it's something here, I guess, in America that's really sort of in the last 2 years that has blown up, and it's this, they call it shipper mentality. And obviously it stands for relationship.
Yeah, okay, well, that's interesting. I've seen some fan fiction sites, like I've gone to fan fiction sites and read some fan fiction on different books, just to get an appreciation and understanding of where that's all about, because I can see that's quite popular. But yeah, I hadn't heard that term. I guess to a smaller degree, I've experienced it in that there have been some people that have reached out to me and sort of demanded certain things, and I've just looked at it. At first I thought it was a bit of a joke. I read the email and thought, what? Sorry? And read it again. I mean, I didn't even listen when I was a child, when I was being told what to do. There's not much hope as me being a creative author. But, it's interesting. I'm sure that I'll be exposed to that at some point. But it's everything about the creative process and reaching out to people and the colours, the different kinds of people that reach out to you has certainly been an interest.
Yeah, I find it very interesting when you have fans that connect so much that they start to evolve your character in their own head. They're like, well, what would this person do in this situation? And to me, I mean, it is sort of the ultimate form of flattery in the way that they are continuing the story of that character. They're continuing their thoughts and their ideas. And to me, it means that they connected. They didn't just read the book and they didn't just enjoy the book, but they really sort of have an emotional attachment to the characters in the story.
Yeah, and I find that that's probably the best part. That's the part that I've loved. There was a couple of forums. So once again, while I was doing this process and learning a lot around marketing and how to reach out to people to get people to be interested to review the books, I stumbled across this forum. I can't think of the name at the moment, but they were actually having a conversation around the characters of my book, which I thought was quite surreal. And I sat in this forum watching them talking about Bodhi and, Talia and Brad and, which is this relationship, I guess, that could be considered to some degree a bit of a triangle because Talia had grown up with Brad and so they had a very close relationship. And then longer term, she actually meets Bodhi, who's the person that she's, feels is the love of her life. And, he is the love of her life during the course of Sated. And the journey that takes place between the relationships. And some people are saying, but, she should have been with Bodhi. She should have been with Brad. She should have been with Brad. And they were all, having this conversation. So I jumped in and started talking to them. And in the end, told them who I was. And they were quite chuffed. And I just said to them, I was just amazed that they had spoken in this forum. I was in there for probably 45 minutes. Before I actually said anything. And it was fascinating because they weren't characters, they were real to them. They're like, no, but Brad did blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, okay, yep. And I'm watching and I'm thinking, this is just fantastic. I love it. So it's nice that it's taken to that space for people because it means that they're getting so much from what I'm writing. And I feel blessed about that. I think it's wonderful. I really love it.
Yeah, it sounds really amazing to be able to see the fans react like that. That's truly remarkable. Absolutely. So what do you have going on? Do you have social media pages? I know we mentioned the website. Where can fans reach out other than Amazon, of course, to get the books?
For the books, it's out there basically on iTunes. Hopefully in next month I'll start releasing the first book, Wantin, in audio. I see even in that process. Yeah, even in that process, I actually am the person that is reading the book because I wanted to take the journey and the experience of converting the book to audio and not necessarily just hiring someone. I wanted to make sure that the emotion was articulated. And that was a whole journey of itself and an experience because there's one thing writing the book, there's another reading.
Right.
Yeah, and so there were moments there where I would just laugh and then just the person that was helping me in the studio doing the recording would just look at me and we'd both burst out laughing, and 45 minutes later we'd say, okay, and I'm done. I can't speak anymore because I'd used my voice from some of the things that I'd said. So it ended up being just a complete